Hey, if you're a service leader trying to recruit talent, expand your network, collaborate, find influencers for any reason at all, and you're not looking on LinkedIn, then you are missing a huge opportunity. LinkedIn is not just for resume building and job searching anymore. It is a full content creation marketplace built for professionals. My next guest, Mindi Rosser, talks about how to hack LinkedIn to be able to recruit, find influencers, and expand your network. She has some tangible tips and takeaways that anyone can do to help improve your profile, how to send messages that get received, and also, create content and connect with people in a way that feels authentic and, as she puts it, not creepy. Mindi is a business owner who helps other business owners, thought leaders, and subject matter experts to have great conversations with their audiences, prospects, and peers based on trust, authenticity, and consistency on LinkedIn. Who does that sound like? That sounds like what we do, right? She's worked in the agency world with startups and then decided to branch out and work directly with business leaders on their social presence, building thought leadership and working with them to fill their pipelines with ideal clients through LinkedIn. As an entrepreneur, she values freedom and coloring outside the lines. She loves building systems that work on LinkedIn and testing them to generate results for her corporate and entrepreneurial clients. Mindi is super down to earth. She tells it like it is, and really just, I think, has a lot of valuable information. For me, I think just coming to LinkedIn from a different perspective of, hey, this is the place to connect with like-minded individuals, and they also want to connect with you. That to me was just a huge aha moment. So please join me in welcoming my next guest, Mindi Rosser, as we talk about how to use LinkedIn to connect and to grow. Hey, welcome to another episode of Passion and Profits. I'm your host, Jacob Moore. And today I have a very special guest, Mindi Rosser. She is I dare say, LinkedIn guru. As far as I'm concerned, with my limited knowledge, you're a guru, Mindi. Is that too much?
A little much, but I'll take it. I love talking LinkedIn. So all things LinkedIn, I'm in.
I like it. You, I have to point out, are coming from a great distance away today. You're residing in
Oahu. So Hawaii, North Shore, Haleiwa area, if anybody's familiar.
I love it. Mindi, I wore this shirt especially for you today.
I thought so. I saw the shirt and I'm like, you're bringing the aloha. I love it.
I had to. I'm a big fan. So I've never actually been to Hawaii, and I've flown over it on my way to Australia, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. I want to go there. And all my years when I lived in Los Angeles, I was just like, so close. And I haven't made it yet. But when I wear this shirt, I feel the vibes.
Love it. It's all about the aloha shirts.
Yeah, for sure. So a little backstory here for our friends listening in. I basically came across Mindi. Unlike many people I've talked to on the show, like we don't know each other. Actually, today is the first day that we're meeting outside of email or LinkedIn. So I actually connected with Mindi because I used some of the tips and strategies that she suggested about LinkedIn in her content on LinkedIn to book her as a podcast guest. So that right there should tell you everything you need to know about Mindi's method and her approach to LinkedIn, and the fact that It works. You can connect with great people on LinkedIn. It's possible. So, Mindy, today we're talking about how to do just that. How do we recruit people and expand our network on LinkedIn? I mean, I think LinkedIn is the number one place to connect with like-minded people. It is set up for that purpose. That's why people are there, right? Why can you tell us why LinkedIn is such a great place to connect with people?
Think it's very different from so many other social channels like a Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, the ones we think of, Twitter, because it is the place where we go when we are in our professional mindset. So when we are
Mm,
on LinkedIn, it's a very different headspace than when we are on another channel looking to entertain or engage or go back and forth, have a Twitter war, whatever your favorite leisure activity is on the social medias. LinkedIn is very different in that when you are coming here, you are thinking about business, about professional growth, about your career, about connecting with people that can help you, that you can help. So it's just a very different headspace. And because of that, it makes it a very special place because there is no
mm.
other place that I have found on the interwebs that is like LinkedIn in that way, where we are in the headspace ready to engage on professional topics, on our careers, and really about growing professionally.
Yeah, I love that, and that's really why I love LinkedIn. And I'll admit, I'll be the first to admit that I don't use it as much as I should.
Mhm.
Given what I do, it's the natural place to go. Um, but I'm still learning, to be honest with you, and that's what I do on this podcast. Is I talk with experts like you, and I learn along with our listeners. So I'm going to be doing that today. We're going to be talking about how to find influencers and recruit people um, without coming across as creepy. And I'm really love that setup, Mindy, because I think it's just it. You know what? I'm thinking of LinkedIn now as like it's like the equivalent of a dating app, but for professionals,
That's
right?
a good way to put it. Yes. Ah.
Because like on dating, like we don't want to come across as creepy, but it's just as important on LinkedIn as well, right?
That's so
Absolutely.
true. Yeah.
We're also going to be talking about your LinkedIn profile and how to really up your game on your LinkedIn profile and why that's important to do. I've used some of your tips there, and then the third thing we're going to talk about is connection invitations and how to actually get people to say yes to the messages that you send them. So let's dig right in. If I'm new to LinkedIn, right? If I just I set up a profile when I was in college or when I was like looking for a job 5 years ago, and I just haven't used LinkedIn. It's changed a lot in the last few years, right? From when I signed up to what it is now. What are the top things people need to know about LinkedIn today as it stands?
Good question. When it comes to LinkedIn today, it is really different, even from like 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Like, if you're thinking back that far, things have shifted a lot, especially since the pandemic, too. I just the way that we
Mm,
work. So many companies are now remote now. So there's a lot of different changes, I think, that have affected it from the pandemic in particular, but also just the way that we want to connect with each other on LinkedIn and how people are using it. So back in the day, LinkedIn used to be the place where you would get a job. You would upload your resume, and entrepreneurs weren't really there. People that were like in the business owner space weren't really there either. It was really used
hmm.
much more as a recruitment tool, and it's still used for that today. I mean, that it hasn't gone away. So that is still a very important use of LinkedIn and a really good place to find people in that regard. But also, there are other uses for LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has shifted in that many entrepreneurs and business owners are now using it as well, which also the upside is that's great. We can all get connected with each other. The downside is that many of them are not sure how to use it, or somebody has told them,
Yeah.
just hire a VA, send some messages, blast people. Here's a LinkedIn list from Sales Navigator
Ugh,
and send the same message to everyone.
I
And so
hate
there's so much
I hate
spam.
those messages.
Don't we all? It's like, again, come on. It's like this is something that was used like 10 years ago and it didn't work, and people are still using
Thank
the
you.
same tactics. Yeah.
Thank you. And spell my name right, please.
Yes,
If you're going to
exactly. And
do
my
it, spell my
company.
name right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I've noticed is like, I mean, there's the opportunity for content creation now on LinkedIn. And in that way, it's become maybe more like Facebook or Instagram where you can, post videos and blogs and, articles and share articles. But I think it's interesting because like the multiple uses, like as an entrepreneur, I don't even think about it, but I'm like, well, yeah, that's where I'm going because I want to connect with decision makers and leaders in other organizations and companies. So, like, of course, I'm there. Um, but I have connected with fellow entrepreneurs as well, which is a huge bonus as someone who, especially like you said, during pandemic, I haven't had that camaraderie. I haven't had the ability to get out and go to conferences and connect with people and meet organically. But I've connected with some really like minded individuals, and now people that I collaborate with through LinkedIn, which is great.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really interesting. I'm happy to see you mention the content. I did want to talk about that a little bit, just like the content shifts that LinkedIn has had, and just the way that we can actually get our messages out there better. When they came up with the creator mode, which obviously it's not original to them, it was on Facebook and other channels before this, but how they capitalized on it, I think for their audience was really, really good. Like I love the LinkedIn Live feature. There now are audio events for those people who really liked Clubhouse or that vibe and really want to carry that over into LinkedIn, that's now available to, I would say,
Hmm.
at least most profiles that I've seen who have creator mode turned on. And then the newsletter feature, which I really like because it's a softer way to have that weekly newsletter without someone having to give
Mm,
you their email address. So it's a really nice way to build your audience
yeah.
organically as well over time.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so that's a good segue into this idea of finding influencers or finding people to collaborate with or recruiting talent. Um, I'm going to guess that one of your strategies is around content creation.
I do love content creation. I will say I love people who come up with great content. So for me, finding people that way via their content is one of the easiest ways for me to get to know them. And then also to kind of learn about their mindset, their headspace. I like to see if they're consistent or not. You know, it's like, do they keep showing up or
Mm,
is this like a flash in the pan? What are they talking about? When it comes to a true influencer, what I'm looking for per se is somebody who can actually change the way I think and change my perspective, even if I don't agree with them. So I don't have to 100% say, oh, yeah, that's exactly right. But they get me to think about a topic differently and they get me to explore ideas. So influencers in
yeah.
that way, they don't have to have a huge following. And I think we have this mistaken perception that they have to have tens of thousands of followers to be an influencer. That's not the case. It's if you can actually change perspectives and if you are influencing the
Mm,
people that are a part of your tribe, people that resonate with your message and really helping them to achieve their objectives. So I think really getting clear on what an influencer actually is really important. And
mm.
most of the time, content is a part of that equation.
Yeah, Mindy, I'm so glad you talked about the definition of an influencer. I think most people have this perception of it's just somebody who's, creating TikTok content and it's, fun dance moves or food stuff, fashion. Um, but and let's zoom out. Like, why is this important to our listeners, people who are in leadership positions and working for public good? Influencers are an opportunity to expand your network and legitimize what you're doing. And like you were saying, Mindy, they don't have to have tens of thousands of followers. Micro influencers have just as much value if they can, like you said, shift that perspective. And I like to think of them as allies, right? People who align with your brand, align with your mission, align with, what you're trying to do. Um, and you bring them on as allies to help further your mission or to promote, your programs or whatever you're trying to do. Um, you mentioned consistency. This is where I fail almost every time. This is the biggest challenge that I have is consistency with content creation. And what I hear you saying is that if you go to my LinkedIn profile and you don't see consistent content creation, I don't seem as legitimate. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is accurate. And whether we want to think, believe it or not, it really is how people are judging, because on the internet, people don't get to see us in person. They don't know what's going on in our life versus like if they're coming into the office and we know they're having a hard time, they're not producing as much at work, we kind of give them a break like, but I know they're a good person. On the internet, we don't have that luxury. So consistency is kind of the way that we make up for that in,
Mm,
without being in real life with all of these people. And so the
yeah.
consistency is so, so important. And without it, it's just going to be a little bit more challenging to build that trust and credibility. Yes, you can explain it away. Yes, you can maybe change your frequency if you want to adjust your consistency. So there are ways to work around it and ways to, compensate for it if you aren't able to be consistent. But it really comes down to figuring out, when can you be consistent? How consistent can you be? It doesn't have to be as frequent. Like sometimes we think we have to have this frequency that is, I'm publishing every day or I'm publishing once a week, and that may be too much for us. So I think really thinking through what consistency looks like for us, we get to determine that. But as long as it's consistent enough for our audience, then we're good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reminded about a recent conversation with Dr. Judy Ho. I interviewed her on my podcast, and she's talking about stopping self sabotage. And one of the major approaches to stopping self sabotage is to disrupt and replace that behavior that is that sabotage that's popping up as an obstacle. And you know consistency, or discipline, right, could be another word for that, is absolutely a way to disrupt that self-sabotaging behavior. um, I often feel overwhelmed by, oh, but I want to create this, um, and that and the other thing and do it every single day. And I want it to look like this and be like this. And I get so overwhelmed that I, I maybe stop and end up not doing anything. But what I hear you saying is it's more about doing one thing, even just a small thing, over and over and over again. And with that, you build credibility and skill sets and connections.
Yeah, and when it comes to consistency too, there is also a downside where I have seen so many people be consistent with the wrong things on LinkedIn. And so
Mm,
yes, they're consistent, but they're also not doing the right things. Like they're over posting or oversharing or sharing stuff that is a little too personal for LinkedIn, or they just don't know exactly how to approach LinkedIn differently from other channels. So there is that downside. So I think what I usually tell people is if you're struggling with consistency, realize that on LinkedIn, it can be less frequent than any other channel. People do not expect you to be there all the time publishing every day. Once a week is usually really good for most people on LinkedIn. And then
sure.
keeping in mind that you want to be consistent with the right activities.
That's great. I love that. This is gold as far as, you know, helping people just get started on approaching LinkedIn. So thank you for this. How else are we connecting with influencers and recruiting and expanding our network?
There are other ways. So I think a lot of times we immediately, like you mentioned, think of content. But there are also other ways to find influencers, which is actually using LinkedIn's tools and search features to find people, which is what I do for a
Mm,
lot of my clients and people that want to be more specific and not just kind of like happen across somebody like, oh wow, they're interesting. And it's kind of in the moment, but it's not structured. If you are needing to fill a pipeline or if you are trying to find a consistent number of people who are influential in the space, you are going to have to do some research and do some outbound. And so that's where LinkedIn is
mm,
really awesome when it comes to finding people, because you can find just about anyone based on their search criteria, especially if you are using a tool like Sales Navigator. You can find a lot with a free LinkedIn account as well. But if you want to get really granular and you're really specific about your criteria, there are so many search filters in Sales Navigator
yeah,
that you can find just about anyone.
that's great. And so you use a premium version of LinkedIn. which helps you connect with those specific people that you're looking to connect with. And there's value in that for you.
There definitely is. And I think it really depends on your audience too. For those people who do not have like a list, like some people will come to me and they're like, Mindy, I already know what companies I'm trying to get into. I know where I'm already looking. They may not need something like Sales Navigator or, a premium LinkedIn subscription. But for those people who are coming to me saying, I know why people are on LinkedIn. I have this criteria. I've created a marketing avatar, but how do I actually find them? I don't know exactly where to look. That's where a premium LinkedIn account can actually be helpful. But a lot of people I work with don't need that much, they don't need something that extensive as a sales navigator account or something like that. They may have a list or communities or might be able to target people in other ways and find them. The thing is, when you are doing a list, if you do decide to use something like a sales navigator search, just keep in mind that what LinkedIn pulls, I would say at least 30% of the people on that list are still not going to be a fit, no matter how granular you get with your
Mhm.
criteria. So you want to be really, really thoughtful and actually look at people's profiles, make sure that a real human is looking at their profiles. And also, if you're going to reach out to those people, you have to be really, really good about your messaging. Because what tends to happen is that people just are like, oh, I've got this big list. I'm going to send to 100 people. I've got this template.
Right.
Boom, it's done. Versus actually being thoughtful and approaching them like humans.
Yeah, and it's so tempting because like I'm busy. I got a lot going on. I'm running a business and a team, and so of course it's easier for me just to blast out an email to everybody that I find. But what I'm hearing you say is that that's not really productive or effective.
That is so true. And I think when we remember that humans like to connect with humans, so when we approach them as a real human, when we can actually display that we've done a little bit of homework, we've actually looked at their profile. We don't want to be creepy though. I've seen people over personalize, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how did you find that information from me, like on Facebook from 5 years ago? That's a little weird. But as long as we are being appropriate and whatever's on their LinkedIn profile, as long as you've done a little bit of homework, and if you follow their content, great, mention that if
Sure.
they have content. But I think it's really just matching it to the audience. And when you can do that well, and when you practice, you have to
Yeah.
practice it though. You're never going to hit it right out of the gate right away. And I think a lot of people try and they feel like they fail. And so they stop. And the thing is, okay, if that one didn't work, that message didn't work, or
Mhm.
it's not getting great feedback, then go back to the drawing board and figure out how you can start a conversation more naturally next time. But don't give up just because the first one didn't work.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, speaking of not coming across as creepy, we want to make sure that our LinkedIn profile is looking great and coming across in the professional manner and relaying the message that we really want to share. So, what are your top tips for getting attention from people just based on your LinkedIn profile?
I love this question. I love this topic because I think so many people forget how powerful their LinkedIn profile is or just don't realize it. It's very different from a place like Instagram where you get like this little tiny bio and nobody's really looking at it until they come across a piece of content. On LinkedIn, it's the reverse. People usually will see your LinkedIn profile first, or at least they'll see your name and those first few words of your headline. And that grabs
Mm,
their attention before they even read your content, which you think is kind of the exact opposite. But that's how we kind of suss people out on LinkedIn and just make sure that they are thoughtful, that they are people we want to do business with, that we want to connect with. And so the profile is really, really important when it comes to building trust and credibility on LinkedIn, especially your headline. So I usually tell people start with your headline. If you don't do anything else on your profile, start with your headline. And your headline, there's a formula. So 4 things that need to be in your headline. First of all, who you are, whom you help, how you help them, and then the results that you generate. So when you can put all of that inside of your LinkedIn headline, you will immediately be very clear on who you are, who you serve. Should people connect with you, they're going to get all of that information in a split second just looking at your headline. It usually takes people a few tries to get that headline just right, where you feel confident with it and it's clear to your audience. But the key is with that headline, you want to attract the people that would be a good fit to connect with you or be a part of your network, and you want to repel those people that you could care less if they're a part of your network. So your headline can be a little bit polarizing, but it needs to
Hmm.
attract the right people is the key.
I love this. This is such great information, Mindy. I mean, in that headline, just that little blurb right there, there's so much opportunity to connect. And whether you're, someone who's an entrepreneur, or a leader trying to connect with talent, this headline it's your billboard, right? It's your opportunity to really showcase who you are and what you do. I love those 4 points. Who are you? Who do you help? Or like if you're a service leader, you know, who are your services for, or who are you trying to connect with? How you help them, I think is super important, because that's nebulous in so many ways. And then, what's that impact? What are you actually doing, and what are the results of that? I think that's fantastic. Um, there's another profile tip that I learned from you. And the thing is I didn't even learn it because of your content. I visited your profile. So just for background, for our listeners, Mindy popped up on my feed, and it was either like a piece of your content, or it was an ad, or it was something that you had created popped up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need that. And so, I, as I usually do, try to like reverse engineer everything, right? I'm like, give me the free content. I want to look at what's out there, and I want to like see if I can do it myself, right? And so like I looked at your profile, and I was like, this is slick, right? I didn't even realize you had those 4 things, but you did. But the coolest thing that I saw on your profile, and I'd never seen anybody do this before, is you used the pronunciation of your name, that opportunity to record that little pronunciation of your name. You use that as an intro. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
That's so fun. I love to talk about that whenever I'm teaching something on LinkedIn. I will usually start with that because it's such a fun thing to do and it's an immediate attention grabber. There's something about, we know because we're podcasting right now, there's something about hearing somebody's voice in your ears as you're listening that just builds that trust when you can
Mm-hmm.
actually put a voice to the face. It's like, oh, you're a real human. You're not just a bot. You're not someone who just set up your profile. So using that audio pronunciation for your name and saying your name, I am technically saying my name, but also just using that as a greeting to really let people kind of into your world and get to hear your voice if they're interested in that. I feel like it is an untapped
Yeah.
opportunity that so many people are not using, and it takes 10 seconds. Like it's really easy to do.
Yeah. And I was surprised actually how much space they give you to talk. And it's not just like, you know, 1 second and you like say your name and you got to say it quick. It's like there's enough of space there that you can get, a short sentence or a phrase in. And like you said, that's enough. And when I listened to yours, I was like, A, that's super smart, but B, I feel a connection now to you, to who you are. And for people who are in service of or leading other people, like what a great opportunity. If someone you're looking at hiring someone, or they're thinking about coming on your team, or being involved in your organization, or taking using your services, to create that human connection in just a couple of seconds. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do. Just pull out your mobile device and go to your profile, and you'll see it right there when you want to edit.
Nice. What other LinkedIn profile tips do you have for us?
I think the other thing to keep in mind with your profile is just in terms of how it's perceived. It's almost like your personal website. So instead of having your name.com, which many of us still
Hmm.
do in the entrepreneurial space, but for those of us who are professionals or working inside of organizations, you're not going to have that most likely. So your LinkedIn profile is the place where people are
Yeah.
going to land when they look you up online. So you want to make sure that it is, first of all, up to date, because if it's not up to date, if there's anything outdated on there or anything that you're not even particularly proud of or any old work history, it is supposed to be a reflection of who you are as a professional now. So if there is stuff that you want to clean up there or just remove, it's not that relevant anymore, you should do that because people want to know what you're doing now. And when that is up to date and crisp, it just reflects very well on your personal brand that you care about your career and your professional history. So it's up to us to maintain that for ourselves. So when you keep
Yeah.
keeping in mind that obviously it's going to show up at the top of a Google search, and then you want it to have a different feel than something like a resume. So many people will start their LinkedIn profile using their resume to
Mm.
fill it out, which I think is a great place to start because it helps you at least fill out the different sections. But eventually, you're going to want to transition it into a little bit more of a story. It's more about your professional story. So, how did you get from there to here? And
Mm.
the easier you can make that for people to understand your journey, because most of us have not stayed in one job throughout our entire career. We have job hopped, we have had lots of interesting side adventures, but when you can tie it together for people so it makes sense when they land on your profile, oh, this is how you got to where you are today. All of that work history makes sense in this context. That is really key. And when you have done that well, people understand literally within 1 to 2 minutes of looking at your profile. If they spend that much time on your profile, they will understand your work history. They will understand who you are
Yeah.
and what you represent, who you're helping, the impacts that you are having. And so making that easy for them is also really,
Yeah.
really important and reflects very well on your personal brand and also will make you much more effective on LinkedIn. So you won't come across as creepy. If you put in the hard work on your profile, when people come to your profile, even if they had like a little inkling of, is this person going to sell me something? If they are a little worried about that, but they come to your profile and it is very well done, very classy, and very, it's showcasing all of those accomplishments, then people are going to trust you and kind of give you a little bit more
Mm.
grace and wiggle room too.
That's great. So a a great profile gives you credibility, and it's your opportunity to tell the story of your career. And I think if we zoom out beyond resume, because I think that's probably how a lot of people still think of LinkedIn, right, as your resume. But if you think about the story of your career, that's really part of your legacy, right? Your professional purpose and your mission and who you are, and that's your opportunity to share all of that with the world. I think coming at it from that mindset is that's a significant shift from just a place to post a resume to get a job.
Yeah, and the people that are even looking for positions, people who are or just open, even if you are simply just open to opportunity, if the right opportunity comes along, having that already done and having that
Hmm.
story polished and told so the world can know, it's just going to make you ready for that opportunity. When someone comes across your profile, they will say, "Oh, you are the right person, and I'm so glad I found you." So I think a lot of job seekers and people who are approaching it from that
Yeah.
perspective too, it's a very powerful way to kind of get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and just, a personal anecdote on that. I used to use exclusively Indeed to find talent, and it was just my go-to. I didn't even think about it. I just went to Indeed, and that's where I posted jobs. And it popped up maybe last year. LinkedIn pushed, hey, post a free job posting on LinkedIn. And so I did. And it was amazing because I got more qualified candidates with that free post on LinkedIn than I got with paid services on Indeed. And it was like, interesting. And I ended up actually hiring someone that I connected with on Indeed. So this time around, when I was looking for an ops person, same thing. I posted. And what was cool, what happened was I actually connected with uh, someone who I had interviewed for No Stigmas years ago. And at the time, it just wasn't a good fit for that organization. But because we were still linked, right, in the network, they saw this opportunity, applied, and guess what? It was a good fit and the timing was right. And so we ended up moving forward. I'm not sharing more details than that because we're actually currently onboarding. So hopefully by the time this episode comes out, we'll be able to share an announcement. But it's just cool to see how that credibility is built into that profile. And I think that's the really cool thing about, for if you're recruiting, to be able to see that story of someone's career right there. And I didn't even put it together until now that, like, psychologically, wow, that gave her a lot of credibility. And of course, I ended up hiring her because I had everything right there. I didn't even have to ask for a resume. But more than that, I get to see the references, who, supports the work and the accomplishments all there in one place. It's great.
Yeah, the LinkedIn recommendations are so powerful on a profile when you can see those because they are attached to somebody's profile. You could click on and go see them. So I think it's just really neat how LinkedIn baked that into the system.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to get a good LinkedIn recommendation. So when somebody has those, it just automatically adds another layer of credibility.
Yeah. I'm getting excited about LinkedIn here. I'm like, okay, I gotta go mess with my profile now. So, Mindy, let's talk about this third topic, sending invitations that are going to get read, going to be well received. Um, how do we do that? I can say this is another area where I have not done a great job. I send out, just blind requests, maybe don't include anything in it, and then I don't hear back. And they're, potential professional connections that I really want to have, or people that I think would be great to work with. I just haven't done maybe my homework and, send them a great message. So what does a great message have? What does it contain?
Good message on LinkedIn is really about being able to get across what you're trying to say. So you need to make it really obvious to them why they should accept. Like when they read that message, they should say, heck yeah, I'm going to accept that connection because you are obviously thought through. I think what you wanted to say to them. It's a good, I mean, it's an
Mhm.
offer in some way, shape, or form. If we're thinking in marketing terms, it's an offer to add each other to each other's networks. And then also, it just needs to resonate. They need to feel that you are a real person, that you are not just mass blasting these connections to people. So I like to recommend looking for a connection point. So if there is a way that you can connect the dots for them, then it makes it a lot easier. So, for example, when I am reaching out to build my network with peers or colleagues, what I will tend to do is I am a part of a number of communities or LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups. And what I will do is I will just look at members there, especially ones who are posting a lot or commenting. I'm like, oh, they look like an interesting person. So then I will reach out to them on LinkedIn saying, hey, can we get connected? We're both in this group. What do you think of this group? I will usually ask a leading question to get the conversation going as well. And it's an easy yes for them to
Mm,
accept because they've seen me active in the group. I'm not just like, a ghost in the group. They're like, who is this person? Like, oh, yeah, you actually are a contributing member of this
right.
community. Yeah, I should be connected to you. I saw your post the other week. So when you are connecting the dots for people and just saying, hey, let's get connected over here too, that makes it really easy for them to say yes. Now, if it's a cold audience, you have to approach them very differently. In every market, every audience is different. If you are looking to hire somebody, so if you are trying to recruit, I think the way
Mm,
that you reach out is going to be critical because job seekers get a ton of messages from headhunters and recruiters, especially if they have like the open to work and they are actively job seeking. So you want to make sure that your
right.
message stands out.
Yep.
And you need to do that in a way that makes them feel that you've actually looked at their profile. I get questions all the time, or like, I get recruiters coming to me and I'm like an entrepreneur and they are like, oh, I read your profile and you'd be a great fit for this position. I'm like, no, I wouldn't. Like what on my profile actually told you that I would be a
No.
good fit for that position? You obviously didn't look. So I think when you do your homework up front before you send it and tailor it, you're going to get a much better response to what you send. And so it's really about doing your homework, making the connection
Yeah.
point, and making sure that in their mind, it's a value add. It's a mutual benefit for the two of you to be connected. Whether or not whatever opportunity or you're talking
Mhm.
about actually pans out, the fact that they look at your profile too, because they're going to look at your profile most likely, and they say, oh yeah, I'm open to being
Right.
connected in your network.
Yeah, I love that. Asking that question, what's in it for them, right? What's that value add to them, I think is super important. And that is the cool thing about LinkedIn, that it has that reciprocity and that opportunity for people to give and get. But like any relationship, if you're going in there just thinking about what can I get, what can I take, what can I take, instead of what can I give to this person, what can I provide to them of value, then that I think that's the difference between something being well received and something feeling like it's a huge ask.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people will lead with something that is a little too heavy of an ask. That like either a discovery call or like let's hop on the phone or can I send you some information? Like it depends on the situation and context. It's very context specific, and there's a lot of nuance on LinkedIn. So you do want to be really thoughtful that you're not
Yeah.
making it feel like a monumental thing when they accept your connection. Like, oh no, what's going to happen now? Am I going to get like a series of 6 sales messages, or are you going to start emailing me and calling me too? You want it to feel very natural and fluid. And that just comes down to building professional relationships. And how do you build them in real life? Apply that same principle to how you approach LinkedIn, of course, taking into account a little bit of nuance.
Yeah, that's great. I love, again, to take that that dating perspective with this. If you're going on a first date with someone, you're not going to propose marriage, right? You need to think of it more like courting and getting to know someone over time and building a relationship. um, if someone love bombs you right away, that's a huge red flag. And if someone does that to you professionally, I would say maybe that's a red flag as well.
It is a huge red flag, and the only people who will respond to that type of approach, that very heavy, salesy, pitchy, love bombing approach on LinkedIn, are those who are really desperate and just kind of looking for anything. And for some reason, like yours stood out, they're like, oh, that's exactly what I need right now. Which in turn, they're probably not going to be either the best candidate if you're recruiting or the best person to work with if you are looking to, contract with somebody or work together.
Yeah, I love that. This is fantastic information, Mindy. I know we could talk for hours and hours and hours about this, but my biggest takeaways here so far are, when we are really trying to find people, doing that through our content is a great way to do that. Shifting to thinking about consistency with your content is really important, and then using specific search functions to make sure you're connecting with the individuals that you want to. So being discerning with that. Using your profile is a really great way to be able to also connect, whether it's that headline message or using your recording, your pronunciation of your name. But more than anything, that's your opportunity to tell your professional story and to really show people who you are and give them a sense of your humanity, from a professional perspective. I think that's really great. And then when we're reaching out, we got to add value. We got to make it obvious what we're asking about, or for, but also a small enough ask that is going to be received in a positive way. um, Fantastic takeaways there. So if you had one final piece of advice for our leaders out there, what would it be? What's your call to action? What's that golden nugget here?
I think the biggest thing would be to look at your LinkedIn headline because that will set the stage for every single other activity that you do on LinkedIn now and in the future. So pay attention to your headline and really try to
Hmm.
either apply that formula or just create a headline that you feel like speaks to your target audience and really resonates with them. So you will start getting more people to reach out and connect with you as
Yeah,
well.
I love that. And Mindy, I know that you have a ton of content, because I've consumed some of it. I'm on your mailing list, and you're giving me value adds all the time. I'm learning through just being connected on LinkedIn. Um, what's one thing that might be helpful for people who are trying to kind of understand how to relate, and what's their next steps with LinkedIn? Do you have maybe something you can share with people?
Yes, I do have, we can put a link in the show notes, I think, but a LinkedIn profile guide, which will actually walk you through what we talked about today with the headline and also
Awesome.
help you with the about section and then what to do with your first few experience sections. So it'll give you a really good jump start if you're looking to improve your LinkedIn profile.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we'll definitely drop that in the show notes, and we'll link to your website and all your socials as well. Obviously, your LinkedIn. Um, so yeah, this has really again been a great learning experience for me. I a- appreciate just like the micro and the macro of the opportunity to be able to connect with you on LinkedIn. Know that I'm not getting it all wrong, and well, actually, I just want to make one note here to kind of wrap this up, because I found you and connected with you on LinkedIn, but I actually ended up emailing you is how I first connected with you, right? I emailed you, and apparently it wasn't creepy because you responded, but that's also an effective way, I think, to connect with people. If you don't want to spend all of your time on LinkedIn, finding contact information and being able to connect with people. But what was it about my email that made you say yes, made you want to connect? Maybe that's a good ending, parting lesson here.
Well, you did stroke my ego because you said you listened to my content and you responded. What was cool was you responded to one of my email newsletters that I send out every week. And so that got my attention because I always look for anybody who hits reply on that, because you don't get a ton of those. When somebody does, they're like excited about what they read or something. So because you did that, I'm like, huh, you're on my email list, which means you know my content, you know my style. You also did your homework because of the way that you reached out without being creepy. It was just, you mentioned that you enjoyed my content and it was resonating and you are actually applying it and it was working. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, of course I have to talk to you. This is incredible. You're actually applying the techniques. And so when you can reach out, not everyone you can reach out to in that way, but I feel like in this situation, it was a perfect fit. And so for me, it was exciting. I'm like, I want to hear what's working for you on LinkedIn too. And I'm a super curious person. So when you say that you're applying, and I'm like, oh, what kind of results are you getting? So we have to talk.
Nice. Oh, great. That's a great affirmation, and I'm really glad to be connected to you, Mindy. I'm looking forward to learning more from you, and just applying these techniques. I think it's going to be really helpful. So, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise, and on behalf of the community, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
My biggest takeaway from this episode today was that LinkedIn is really the story of your career and your opportunity to put it all out there on your terms. You get to share that story in any way that you want to. And depending on who you're trying to connect with or the message that you're trying to relay, this is your place to do it, where like-minded people also want to connect with you. And I think that's the really cool thing about LinkedIn is it's sort of like a warm crowd. As long as you're approaching it in the right way, right? Adding value to people and coming from a place of giving and actually wanting to connect as a human being, showing some authenticity there, um, then you have the opportunity to make those connections that you want to make. So really fantastic. I think for service leaders, especially if you have limited resources, this is an opportunity for you to use LinkedIn to really understand how you can expand and maybe fill in some of the gaps that might be missing because of limited budget or reach. So MindiRosser.com is where you can find my guest. I will drop everything in the show notes here. But I really appreciate you listening today, and let me know how this is working out for you. If you try some of these tips, please reach out, take a screenshot, or post a message and tag me and tag Mindy and let us know how LinkedIn is working for you. Well, that's it for today. We'll talk to you next time. In the meantime, be well.